Imagine this. You wake up in the middle of the night, your heart pounding, your mind racing. The room is silent, but inside you there's a storm, a cacophony of thoughts, fears, and desires that refuse to be quieted. You try to close your eyes to return to sleep, but the noise within only grows louder. It's as if there's a battle raging in the depths of your being, a war you didn't sign up for, yet one you cannot escape. This is not a dream. This is the silent war within every human. It's a war that doesn't announce itself with trumpets or banners. It doesn't leave visible scars or call for ceasefires. It's a war fought in the shadows of your mind, in the quiet moments when you're alone with your thoughts. It's a war between who you are and who you think you should be, between the life you're living and the life you feel you were meant to live, between the person the world sees and the person you know yourself to be. And here's the paradox. The more you try to ignore this war, the louder it becomes. The more you try to silence it with distractions, endless scrolling, overworking, numbing substances, the more it festers, growing stronger, more insidious. It's a war that cannot be won by force, yet one that demands your attention. Why does this war exist? Why do we, as humans, carry this constant tension within us? Why do we feel so deeply divided, so at odds with ourselves? The answer lies in a truth so fundamental, so universal, that it has been explored by the greatest minds in history. Carl Jung called it the shadow. Nietzsche spoke of the eternal struggle between our higher and lower selves. Dostoevsky's characters grappled with the duality of human nature, torn between light and darkness. And Sartre warned us of the unbearable weight of freedom, the burden of having to choose who we become. But here's the question that haunts us all. If this war is so universal, why do we feel so alone in it? Why do we walk through life pretending everything is fine, while inside we're battling forces we don't fully understand? Perhaps it's because we've been taught to see this war as a weakness, a flaw to be hidden. We're told to stay positive, to keep moving forward, to focus on the good. But what if this war isn't a flaw at all? What if it's the very essence of what it means to be human? What if the tension we feel, the divide between who we are and who we could be, is not a curse, but a calling? Imagine this. What if the silent war within you is not something to be feared, but something to be embraced? What if it's the catalyst for your greatest transformation, the key to unlocking a life of depth, meaning, and authenticity? But before we can answer these questions, we must first understand the nature of this war. We must uncover its roots, trace its origins, and see how it has shaped not only our individual lives, but the very fabric of society. This is not just a journey of self-discovery. It's a journey into the heart of what it means to be human. It's a journey that will challenge everything you think you know about yourself, about others, about the world. And it begins with a single, unsettling truth. The silent war within you is not yours alone. It is the human condition. But here's the twist. The moment you realize this, the moment you stop running from the war and start facing it head-on, is the moment everything changes. This is where the real battle begins, and this is where we must go next. To understand the silent war within, we must first confront its origins. This is not a war that begins in adulthood, nor is it a product of modern life. It is as old as humanity itself, woven into the very fabric of our existence. It is the tension between our primal instincts and our higher aspirations, between our animal nature and our spiritual longing. Carl Jung called this tension the shadow, the part of ourselves we refuse to acknowledge, the aspects of our being we deem unacceptable, unworthy, or too dangerous to face. The shadow is not inherently evil. It is simply the part of us that has been exiled, repressed, or denied. But like any exiled force, it does not disappear. It grows stronger in the dark, festering until it demands to be seen. This is why the silent war feels so personal, so intimate. It is not just a battle between good and evil, but a clash between the self we present to the world and the self we hide even from ourselves. It is the voice that whispers, "You're not good enough," the fear that says, "You'll never be loved," the anger that simmers beneath the surface, waiting for a moment to erupt. But why do we exile these parts of ourselves in the first place? Why do we create this inner division? The answer lies in our need for belonging. From the moment we are born, we are conditioned to seek approval, to fit in, to conform to the expectations of others. We learn quickly that certain emotions, anger, jealousy, fear, are not welcome. We are taught to suppress them, to bury them deep within, and so we create a mask, a persona, a version of ourselves that is acceptable to the world. But this mask comes at a cost. The more we identify with it, the more we lose touch with our true selves. The more we deny our shadow, the more power it gains over us. This is the paradox of the silent war. The very act of trying to escape it only deepens the divide. Friedrich Nietzsche understood this deeply. He saw that modern society, with its emphasis on rationality and morality, had created a false sense of unity within the self. We are taught to believe that we are singular, coherent beings, when in truth, we are a multiplicity of desires, instincts, and contradictions. Nietzsche called this the will to power, the driving force behind all human behavior, the urge to assert ourselves, to grow, to become. But this will to power is not always conscious. Often it manifests in ways we don't understand, in the very conflicts we try to avoid. Arthur Schopenhauer took this idea even further. He believed that the root of all human suffering lies in our endless striving, our insatiable desires. We are caught in a cycle of wanting and not having, of achieving and still feeling empty. This, he argued, is the nature of existence itself, a constant tension between what is and what could be. But perhaps the most profound insight comes from Jean-Paul Sartre, who declared that man is condemned to be free. This freedom, he argued, is not a gift but a burden. We are forced to choose, to create ourselves, to define our own meaning in a world that offers none. And this responsibility is terrifying. It is easier to hide behind our masks, to let others define us, than to face the enormity of our own freedom. So here we are, caught in a web of our own making. We are divided because we have been taught to divide ourselves. We are at war because we have been taught to deny the very forces that make us human. But this is only the beginning. The silent war is not just a personal struggle, it is a societal one. It is reflected in the way we live, the way we love, the way we work. It is the reason we feel so disconnected, so alienated, even in a world that is more connected than ever. And this is where the real danger lies. Because when we refuse to face our inner conflicts, when we project them onto the world, we create a culture of division, of violence, of endless striving. We create a world where no one feels whole, where everyone is fighting a battle they don't fully understand. But there is hope. Because the moment we recognize this pattern, the moment we see the silent war for what it truly is, we can begin to break free. And that is where we must go next. The silent war within does not stay confined to the individual. Like a ripple in a pond, it spreads outward, shaping our relationships, our communities, and our societies. It is the invisible force behind many of the problems we face today: alienation, addiction, polarization, and a pervasive sense of emptiness. Consider this. Why do so many people feel disconnected, even in an age of unprecedented connectivity? Why do we scroll through social media, craving connection, only to feel more isolated? Why do we chase success, wealth, and status, only to find ourselves more anxious and unfulfilled? The answer lies in the silent war. When we are divided within ourselves, we project that division onto the world. We seek external validation to quiet the inner turmoil, but no amount of likes, followers, or achievements can fill the void. The more we chase these external markers of worth, the further we drift from our true selves. This is the tragedy of modern life. We have become experts at numbing the symptoms of the silent war, but we rarely address the root cause. We turn to distractions, alcohol, drugs, shopping, binge-watching, to escape the discomfort of our inner conflict. But these distractions only deepen the divide. They create a cycle of dependency where we need more and more to feel less and less. Gabor Mate, a renowned expert on addiction, argues that addiction is not a disease, but a response to pain. It is an attempt to cope with the unbearable tension of the silent war. Whether it's substance abuse, workaholism, or compulsive behavior, addiction is a symptom of a deeper problem, a fractured sense of self. But the consequences of the silent war go beyond individual suffering. They shape the very fabric of society. Think about the rise of polarization in recent years. Why do we see such extreme divisions, political, cultural, ideological, in a world that is more interconnected than ever? The answer lies in the silent war. When we are at odds with ourselves, we project that conflict onto others. We create enemies, scapegoats, and others to externalize the battle within. This is not just a psychological phenomenon. It's a neurological one. Cognitive biases like confirmation bias and the backfire effect show how our brains are wired to protect our sense of self. When our beliefs are challenged, we double down, not because we are stubborn, but because our identity feels threatened. The silent war within makes us defensive, reactive, and prone to conflict. And then there's the broader cultural impact. Our society glorifies productivity, achievement, and constant busyness. We are taught to value doing over being, to measure our worth by our output rather than our inner state. But this relentless striving only exacerbates the silent war. It reinforces the idea that we are not enough as we are, that we must constantly prove ourselves, earn our place, justify our existence. This is the unseen consequence of the silent war. It creates a world where no one feels safe to be themselves. A world where authenticity is rare, vulnerability is feared, and connection is superficial. A world where we are all fighting battles we don't fully understand, against enemies we can't quite name. But here's the twist. The very things we do to escape the silent war, the distractions, the numbing, the external validation, only make it worse. They keep us trapped in a cycle of disconnection and despair, and yet there is a way out. The first step is to recognize the silent war for what it is. Not a flaw, not a failure, but a call to awakening. It is a signal that something within us is yearning to be seen, to be integrated, to be healed. This is where the journey truly begins. Breaking free from the silent war is not about winning the battle. It's about ending the war altogether. It's about stepping out of the cycle of division and reclaiming the wholeness that has always been within you. But this is no small task. It requires courage, honesty, and a willingness to face the parts of yourself you've spent a lifetime avoiding. The first step is to stop running. For too long, you've been taught to flee from discomfort, to numb the pain, to distract yourself, and from the inner conflict. But what if the discomfort is not the enemy? What if it's a messenger trying to show you something vital about yourself? Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." This is the essence of the rebellion, to bring the shadow into the light, to integrate the exiled parts of yourself, and to reclaim your power. But how do you do this? How do you face the silent war without being consumed by it? The answer lies in a radical shift in perspective. Instead of seeing the war as something to be fought, see it as something to be understood. Instead of trying to silence the voices within, listen to them. What are they trying to tell you? What unmet needs unexpressed emotions, or unacknowledged truths are they pointing to? This is where shadow work comes in. Shadow work is the process of exploring the parts of yourself you've disowned, the anger, the fear, the jealousy, the shame. It's about sitting with these emotions, not to judge them, but to understand them. To ask, why do I feel this way? What is this emotion trying to protect me from? What does it need to feel safe? This is not easy. It requires vulnerability, patience, and a willingness to sit with discomfort, but the rewards are profound. When you integrate your shadow, you reclaim the energy you've spent repressing it. You become more whole, more authentic, more alive. Nietzsche understood this deeply. He believed that true strength comes from embracing all aspects of yourself, the light and the dark, the noble and the base. He called this the concept of amor fati, the love of fate. It's about saying yes to everything that has made you, who you are, even the pain, even the struggle, because it is through the struggle that you grow. But shadow work is only the beginning. To truly break free from the silent war, you must also confront the stories you've been telling yourself. The stories about who you are, what you're capable of, and what you deserve. These stories are not facts. They are constructs shaped by your upbringing, your culture, your experiences, and they can be rewritten. This is where Viktor Frankl's insight becomes crucial. Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, believed that the ultimate human freedom is the ability to choose our response to any given situation. Even in the most dire circumstances, we have the power to find meaning, to create purpose, to define ourselves. So ask yourself, what stories have I been telling myself? Are they serving me, or are they keeping me trapped? What would it mean to rewrite them? This is not just an intellectual exercise, it's a deeply emotional one. It requires you to challenge the beliefs you've held for years, perhaps even decades. It requires you to question the very foundation of your identity. But here's the truth, you are not your thoughts. You are not your emotions. You are not your past. You are the awareness behind all of it. And that awareness is limitless. This is the heart of the rebellion, to realize that you are not a victim of the silent war. You are its creator, and as its creator, you have the power to end it. But this is not the end of the journey. It is only the beginning. The silent war within is not a curse. It is not a flaw, nor is it a punishment. It is, in fact, the very essence of what it means to be human. It is the tension between who you are and who you could be, between the life you're living and the life you feel called to live. It is the friction that sparks growth, the struggle that gives birth to meaning. But here's the ultimate truth. The war is not the problem. The problem is how you relate to it. For too long, you've seen the war as something to be fought, something to be won. You've divided yourself into factions, good versus bad, light versus dark, acceptable versus unacceptable. But this division is an illusion. It is a construct of the mind, a way of making sense of the chaos within. The real breakthrough comes when you realize that you are not divided. You are whole. You always have been. The war is not a battle between opposing forces, it is a dance, a dynamic interplay of energies that make you who you are. This is the insight that Carl Jung spent his life trying to convey. He called it individuation, the process of integrating all parts of yourself into a cohesive whole. It's not about eliminating the shadow or transcending the ego. It's about embracing everything that makes you human. And this is where Nietzsche's concept of the Übermensch, the overman, comes into play. The Übermensch is not a superhuman. It is someone who has fully embraced their humanity, who has said yes to life in all its complexity and contradiction. It is someone who has stopped running from the silent war and started dancing with it. But how do you get there? How do you move from conflict to integration, from struggle to wholeness? The answer lies in acceptance. Not passive resignation, but active, courageous acceptance. It's about looking at the war within and saying, this is me, this is my humanity, this is my gift. This is what Viktor Frankl meant when he spoke of finding meaning in suffering. It's not about denying the pain or pretending it doesn't exist. It's about seeing the pain as part of a larger story, a story of growth, transformation, and self-discovery. And this is what Sartre meant when he spoke of the burden of freedom. It's not just the freedom to choose, it's the freedom to create yourself, to define your own meaning, to embrace your own truth. So here's the final, most powerful realization. The silent war is not something to be escaped. It is something to be embraced. It is the crucible in which your true self is forged. It is the fire that burns away the illusions, the masks, the false identities, until all that remains is you, raw, real, and radiant. This is not an easy truth to accept. It requires you to let go of the stories you've been telling yourself, the identities you've been clinging to, the illusions you've been living under. It requires you to step into the unknown, to trust in the process, to surrender to the journey. But here's the beauty of it. The moment you stop fighting the war, the moment you stop trying to escape it, is the moment it loses its power over you. The moment you embrace the war, you transcend it. This is the ultimate paradox. The war within is both the problem and the solution. It is the source of your suffering and the key to your liberation. It is the darkness that makes the light visible, the chaos that gives birth to order, the struggle that leads to growth. And so the journey does not end here. It begins anew. You are not a finished product. You are a work in progress, a masterpiece in the making. The silent war is not your enemy. It is your teacher. It is the force that pushes you to grow, to evolve, to become. So the next time you feel the storm within, the next time you hear the voices, the fears, the doubts, don't run, don't hide, don't numb. Listen, feel, be, because the silent war is not just your struggle. It is your gift, and it is through the war that you will find your peace.